To watch or not to watch? That is the question. Hey guys, this is SharpZ and welcome to my Rogue One review. Okay, before we start, just want to point out the obvious here. Spoilers. Spoilers. If you don't like spoilers, hit the stop button. Or is there a stop button? I don't know. But anyway, yeah. If you can't tell, I'm a big Star Wars fan. So Rogue One was a big deal to me. When Rogue One first was announced, I was actually really skeptical. Usually movie spin-offs don't go really well. But this one actually really surprised me. I don't know where to really start with this one. Probably the characters be a good place to start. I watched the movie about a week ago. I wanted to give myself enough time to actually think through this and how I would state the characters, and enough time to actually ponder each of the characters. And I think my one issue with the characters was the two main characters felt a little boring and bland at times. And, I mean, it was kind of unsatisfying. Yeah, but for the most part, the characters were really well done. The droid, for example, the droid was probably one of the best characters in the movie, in my personal opinion. But I have to admit, my favorite has to be the monk. I have a hard time remembering their names. I only remember I think Jin, because her name was in all the advertising. I don't remember the other two. Yeah, but the thing was, the two characters who, the two characters who were the main cast didn't really fit that well, but I have to admit, I think the pilot was funny. The chemistry between the monk and the other temple guard was just downright hilarious. And I really think in the end, if I had to pick one character who probably stood out to me the most, it would definitely have to be the monk. The droid had probably some of the funniest moments, especially near the beginning of the film. But then my issue was later in the film, it felt like he was kind of just an extra almost, because they barely used him after that. Okay, I think yeah, the two temple guards were already dressed. The pilot. The pilot kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but he did feel like a really good character, to be honest. And he wasn't as interesting as the other characters previously mentioned, but he definitely still got a decent amount of laughs from the audience and me as well, since I kind of found him to be the more, I kind of just liked how cowardly he was, because he was kind of, it's almost like the opposite of what you would expect from a traitor, of him being an absolute coward and just fearing for his life. And I feel like part of me did feel like that was, after Force Awakens, it just, that's really similar to what they did in Force Awakens. So now let's get to the big part of this, the plot. Now, I feel like the plot overall was really well done, and I fell in love with the group. I didn't fall in love with every single individual character, but I wanted the group to succeed. And that's really hard to pull off, especially since everyone was kind of expecting for them to die, and we were all like, oh yeah, we're not going to get too attached. And then they made us fall in love with the characters, which, wow. Yeah. And I feel like it was really nice to actually have a different view, because usually you have, it's just almost like when you see someone with a lightsaber running down the battlefield, there's usually like an Obi-Wan or a Luke Skywalker or a Yoda to handle them. But in this movie, the end scene, best scene in the movie, was when Darth Vader was in the, I don't know whether it's pronounced tentative 1V or tentative 6. I always say tentative 1V. But no, it's tentative 4. 4. Oh, why did I say 6? And he's just running through and destroying everyone. Because I was sitting in there with a friend, and the moment I heard that lightsaber ignite, I'm like, it's on. They are not going to make it through this. And none of them did. It was a really well done fight scene. Here's the thing that I actually loved about it. The only issues I had were with certain CGI scenes, but for the most part, it felt like this could have probably, this really does feel like it could have been released around the original Star Wars films. With the plot is much more down to earth, which is something I really love. Because in the past we've had Star Wars movies where it's been, in this movie I think they only went to there are only 4 planets in the entire movie or something crazy like that. Wait, no, let me think about this. Okay. No, that was the same planet. So 1, 2, technically the slave planet, but is that really the, camp planet? I don't know. But, it felt much more like it was the common people. Because my issue with the main Star Wars is that it feels like sometimes the characters just aren't really meshing, so to speak. I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like, my issue is that you feel like none of these characters in the original Star Wars, I love the original Star Wars, don't get me wrong, I sound like Donald Trump right now. But, yeah, the original Star Wars are some of my favorite movies of all time, but my 2 issues are we've never seen Darth Vader just go around and destroy everybody, and we have never seen, of course, sorry, we've never seen any of the, we haven't seen a lot of the common soldier's life. It's felt a little bit too much like we're looking at the A-team. How it should have been pointed that out. They're like, well, we're all going to die, but the A-team over there. And it's a good point, because usually in Star Wars, the main issue is that you don't feel like any of these characters are going to die. There is that feeling, but when you realize that in Star Wars it's a franchise and there's going to be more movies, and if a character's life, they're going to be kept, yeah. Another spoiler alert if you haven't seen Force Awakens. Wow, I'm getting way too spoilery today. But, when Han Solo was killed off, that was kind of expected, because you can only write so much good dialogue for a character. That's why I'm more worried about the Han Solo spinoff. And speaking of spinoffs, if Rogue One showed me one thing, we need a Darth Vader spinoff. We need it. Because Darth Vader destroying everyone was by far the best part of the movie. Because in other movies, you don't know what's going to happen. In this movie, you just hear the lightsaber ignite it, you know that these rebels are dead. And it is probably this is the first movie I've truly been terrified of Vader. And not I wasn't really scared, but it was almost like, oh yeah, they are going to die. I was more scared for the rebels, because I'm like, for a second, let me just say one more thing about that. the best part was after that, he's just kind of standing there in space. They made Vader not feel like a weakened Sith Lord, which was something, ever since the prequels, it's kind of felt like he's just kind of a weakened version of Anakin. But in this, it shows, oh yeah, Vader is still as, if not even more powerful than Anakin Skywalker. Just considering the fact that this Vader has done he pretty much just lifts all their blasters up and crushes them. Which I think we saw that one other movie. Might have been one other Star Wars movie where we saw him, but he just outright destroys everyone. I think the best part, in my opinion, was definitely the intro for Vader. You didn't know it was Vader. You just see a red lightsaber ignite. I was seriously sitting there when Vader was first introduced. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be great. I don't feel like the movie needed Vader, but it actually kind of gave older fans something to look forward to, and it does give more of a reason to me for why. Just think about it. It's just a Senate ship. I don't care if the Death Star plans are on it. It's just a Senate ship. Why would you send your second in command in the Empire? I mean, granted, Vader could probably be very useful, but why would you send your second in command on in the Empire on there? Even, like, considering that, first of all, if these rebels decide, okay, they're going to take the Death Star plans, and their second in command's on board, might as well shoot our own ship down and kill everyone on the ship with the Death Star plans. I mean, and secondly, if it gives, because Vader's just looking out there like, oh yeah, we're going after them, we're taking them, and it was kind of, for a second there, I thought it was going to lead directly into Episode 4, but the problem is, it actually doesn't give us a distinct amount of time. I don't know if it could be a couple weeks from that. It could be a couple minutes. It could be a couple days. It could even be a month from, I'm pretty sure there's been an official announcement of how long it is. I don't know. But I had to admit that if there was one part of the movie that is worth watching over and over and over again, is the Vader scene. Force Awakens kind of brought back the basic lightsaber combat and showed that you can really do well with the combat from the originals. Because the prequels might have had better like CGI, but their combat, in my opinion, at first it was actually really good. Like the Darth Maul fight was amazing. But then when you get to episodes 2 and 3, that's when it kind of gets a little crazy. Actually, except for the end fight of episode 3. Even though the scenery kind of chews them out a little bit. But episode 2, CGI flippy jumps and all that are not really... It doesn't help with the sword fight. It's kind of distracting. But with this particular movie, it actually kind of brought back the whole Vader just going outright slashing and hacking, which was mostly, I think The Force Awakens was part of the reason that's been brought back. But it seems like right now the Force is actually being more focused on in the movies. I know some of you are kind of confused about what I'm saying, but the Force seems to be more centered in combat. Like, for example, in Force Awakens, well, I don't know how much my expected Force Awakens. But, yeah. So they lift up blasters, crushing them. It's in Force Awakens, like when he stopped the laser bolt, or when he outright interrogated someone with the Force. I'm gonna just go ahead and say this. In the Troopers, I'm planning on, which is probably gonna come out I actually have no idea. I'm planning next summer or next winter. Um, because my camera broke and I actually looked at my original script and it was garbage, so toss that out the window and have to rewrite it now. Didn't actually toss it out the window, but I'm rewriting the script. But I already have plans for the characters, and part of it is showing the sheer brutality of the Force, as I like to put it. Because, I mean, I feel like the Force has kind of been held back for the past few movies. Well, I mean, for the first 6 movies, it was kind of held back a little bit. And I think part of that is the effects weren't um, weren't as good as they are today, but also to keep that PG rating. Yeah, Star Wars is getting a little more violent. Um, and let's see here. The only other, I think, the only 3 is it only 3 or 2 have a PG-13 rating, including this one. Because I don't remember if The Force Awakens got one or not. But it was just, I mean, I feel like Star Wars now, they could continue making stuff like Rebels and Clone Wars for the younger audience. Well, Clone Wars is done. R.I.P. Love you, Clone Wars. You always be my baby. Okay, anyway, feels more like Rebels is for the kids. And then for the adults, we have movies like Rogue One. Rogue One's marketing seemed more aimed at adults, now that I think about it. Because when you look at it, a lot of it was just exposition, and then the action scenes are what would appeal to the kids, but I hope Star Wars keeps on this path, actually. I mean, I feel like the spin-offs should be for the adults. Like, spin-offs could be more lore-based and build up the lore and be for the adults. And then the episodes 8 and 9 can kind of be the midway point for kids and adults. I mean, granted, the Han Solo spin-off, that's the one I'm actually really skeptical about. There's certain roles that should not be recast. And there's just something that is kind of bittersweet about seeing the role of Han Solo passed on. I mean, hopefully they don't use CGI to recreate his face. Tarkin. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. My one issue was this. My one big issue, which is, I don't see why it's so big, was some of the CGI face recreations weren't that good. Especially Tarkin. I usually am not bothered by CGI, but I just was watching the movie and I'm just laughing my head off because Tarkin turns around and oh, is this going to be Tarkin? Tarkin, why do you look like a lizard? Tarkin? It's just the eyes were the main problem. I mean, with all the technology nowadays, they could probably have just taken the clips from episode 4, touched them up a little bit, and then just kind of patted it over the face, or even just 3D print a mask or something, and then CGI was left. That's what they did with Uncarplet. Just kind of 3D model his face, make a mask, have someone wear it, and then CGI if you have to. Because at least the eyes don't. I mean, the rest of his face I was kind of fine with, but the eyes kind of bother me. Darth Vader, I think that was practical, except for Hayden Christensen. That was my one issue. This was that was the one thing, one of the many things, let me be honest, in the special editions that bothered me. Hayden Christensen replacing, I forget his name. I know James Earl Jones voiced Darth Vader, but the guy who actually was in the suit was replaced by Hayden Christensen as the Ghost. Yeah, Hayden Christensen is kind of... I mean, I feel like I don't blame him for ruining Star Wars. It's the bad directors. It's not his fault that he didn't perform that well. It's mostly the bad writing. Just try to say any of the lines from the prequels that have been said by Hayden Christensen, Natalie Portman. Well, Ian McGregor actually did a really good job. That's the one thing I'm going to say. Ian McGregor was the one actor who I actually really loved as Obi-Wan. Well, not the one actor I loved as in the prequels. He was kind of I feel like he was probably the best actor in it, especially in Episode 3. Because it really, I really kind of liked how down-to-earth and sensible he was, because it did feel like he was a younger Obi-Wan. But the big thing that I'm excited about with this is kind of like, it's doing better than the prequels with one thing. With many things, actually, but the prequels had a clean slate to work on, and they messed it up. I mean, I think there might have been a little bit of, there was like, I think there was like, Knights of the Old Republic and a few other things, and that was about it. But, I mean, they could have just, imagine like Revan coming back and destroying everyone, or like Revan, or maybe even a wink to it with like TK-18. I don't remember his name, but yeah, it's kind of depressing that now, when the movies came out, they didn't take any of that. They just decided we're going to hire some of the best stars, which is the opposite of what you do for Star Wars movies. You hire new actors. That way, that's what made the original Star Wars so great. It was so fresh compared to the rest of the movies. All the movies that were coming out around that time were pretty much just, it was like Taxi Driver and a lot of these violent movies. Even George Lucas's movie before that was pretty violent. And then there was, like, with Star Wars, it was just having fun. That's what made it such a big hit. It was just a fun movie to watch. But now, with the prequels, they pretty much copied what everyone else was doing. They hired mainstream actors, and then what they also did was they just were like, oh, everyone else is making these CGI movies, and they're getting a lot of money for it, because CGI was really trendy after Jurassic Park. That's what started all the CGI disaster movies, like Godzilla, Independence Day. Like, granted, a lot of them, I'm not saying they're all terrible, but critically they failed. And that's part of the reason why the prequels, they weren't original or fresh or anything. They were just pretty much a cop-out or a rip-off. So, yeah. In conclusion, I would have to say Rogue One was a good movie. It was definitely better than the prequels. And I think it was as good as The Force Awakens. I wouldn't say it was better, and I wouldn't say it was worse. But I feel like the characters were actually, yeah, Jyn Erso is definitely better than Rey. I'm putting it that way. Rey, I found to be one of the most boring characters I've ever seen. Finn was a really interesting character. Finn was better than the pilot, so I could probably do a direct comparison between these two movies' characters, and like, they're pretty obvious comparisons. Like, the pilot guy is Poe. The pilot in this movie, I think, is actually better than Poe, but we haven't seen that much of Poe yet. No, seriously, like, all we have seen of Poe is just him and Finn growing out, and then we just see him in an X-Wing. Please give us more of Poe next movie. Please. But, okay, time for the big guns. The final word is, it's a good movie. I gave it about a, had to say an 8.5 out of 10. I mean, the original Star Wars, it has enough to where it can stand alone as a good movie. It doesn't feel like it's using the original Star Wars as a crutch, but it feels more, and I mean, it doesn't feel like Easter eggs either, for the most part. And they also have little nods for super fans, like how Red 5 died, Lucas Red 5. How, I mean, the only thing that I wish they had done would have been had Admiral Akbar in the ship with the Mon Calamari ship. I wish Admiral Akbar been like maybe just a lieutenant or something, and just have the admiral. Actually, I think Akbar was in the movie. That must have not been Akbar's ship. Yeah, I think he was still on land. Yeah, this kind of makes it crazy, because now we realize that both Akbar and Chewbacca are really old. Now think about it. Akbar has been around in the, Akbar was around in the Clone Wars. I think he was in a TV show. There was one where it was like Kit Fisto and, let me just say this, if there was anything good to come out of the prequels, it's Clone Wars. It was like him, Kit Fisto, and Han Solo. No, not Han Solo. Anakin and Obi-Wan. And I think he was there, but I don't remember if he said it's a trap or not, but Admiral Akbar is... it would have been kind of funny if he had actually gotten a chance to say that in the movie, but I feel like it's kind of the cheesiest line they could possibly do. Like, it's kind of funny. Every time you see Admiral Akbar, you're expecting it's a trap. I swear, they're gonna have like one guy just walk in Akbar into a theater, and you just walk in the theater, you're like, oh yeah, they're gonna go through the original 3. It's like, oh yeah, we lost those tapes, but who loves those? We're watching the prequels. It's a trap! Anyway, till next time, guys, this is SharpZ signing off. Come to me for all your bricks and tricks. I really need an end card. Oh, I haven't hit the stop button yet.